and disgraces the reputation of the Western world before the eyes of the people of the Horn. Protesters on the rally carried placards saying Ethiopia is an ally, not an enemy. Secretary Blinken, stop wrecking peace in East Africa. United States and EU, hands off Ethiopia. Ethiopian Citizens for Social Justice Party, EZEMA, expresses hope that the sixth general election will transform Ethiopia to a new era of peace and development. The party made the remark at its grand event held in Addis Ababa yesterday to wrap up election campaign. Kasaun Chani reports.
Competing political parties are concluding the election campaigns as the sixth general elections drawing near. On Sunday, one of the contesting parties, EZEMA, organized a grand event in Addis Ababa to officially wrap up its nationwide election campaign. Speaking on the event, party chairperson Ishwasa Safa said his party hopes that the upcoming general election will lay a cornerstone for a civilized political transition in the country. Ishwasa has further urged the general public to freely exercise their rights in the election in a civilized way. He thanked the team for their resilience in overcoming the arrests and intimidations that members have been through in the past couple of months.
For more than 4 months, we've been through tough and challenging situations to conduct our campaigning. Not every move was easy and smooth, but with all the setbacks that we have faced during the campaign, we managed to reach to this day. I would like to congratulate you all for your tenacity.
President of the party, Brahanu Nagga, on his part said, the upcoming general election is the outcome of generational struggle that persisted for years.
Our party has been working hard to communicate its policies and manifestos to the general public under the theme Ethiopianism and citizenship, without any discrimination across the nation. We expect the upcoming election to be free, fair and democratic. We believe that this election would change the course of the country's political history. Thus we call upon everyone to exercise their rights by casting their votes. We also need to respect and abide by the law of the land while exercising our rights.
Policy Matters is a conversation platform which aims to provide reasoned analysis and context to the activities, reforms, and policies of the federal government of Ethiopia. Exploring various reforms the government is undertaking, the conversation platform aspires to enable nuanced and informed understanding.
So once the proclamation was enacted, the next phase of the work was establishing Ethiopian Communications Authority from the ground up. This started with really establishing the institution independently to make sure that it's accountable to the Prime Minister's office, but at the same time have independent board members.
Now, the bid, as I mentioned, is over 8 billion over a decade. And it reflects the highest FDI investment to Ethiopia. What really stood out?
This process will create over 1 million, from 1 million to 1.5 million new jobs.
Now, we've also learned that the sale of the second telecom license will be postponed and re-auctioned in the coming months. Can you help us understand what drove that decision? And in your response, maybe also touch on the announcements around infrastructure and mobile money deployments.
The North Star is for the government to continue to open up the sectors that would allow further economic growth, and allow the entrepreneurial spirit of the youth is fully captured in a formal sense, whereby they will be able to generate revenue for themselves, but also for the government through tax.
You're watching the live transmission of this news hour. Ethiopia says a mission to undermine the unity, territorial integrity, and the cohesion of the Ethiopian state under the guise of humanitarian concern is not acceptable. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister Demeqe Mekonnen said Ethiopia is disappointed by the campaign that's being waged against its handling of the situation in the Tigray regional state. Jerusalem Batsa has more.
According to the National Disaster Risk Management Commission data, food and non-food items have been delivered for 4.5 million beneficiaries in the first round and have been delivered for 5.2 million beneficiaries in the second and third round. About 170,798 metric tons of food, which costs 5.4 billion birr or 135 million USD, distributed so far to the Tigray state. In general, humanitarian partners cover 84.95% of the woredas and address 91.3% of the food supply and distribution, whereas 15.05% of the woredas and 8.7% of the food supply and distribution is covered and addressed by the government of Ethiopia. However, huge campaigns by Western powers and representatives of global actors are being waged against Ethiopia's handling of the situation in the Tigray state. That's why, in a pre-recorded video message Saturday, the country's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Demeqe Mekonnen reacted against these campaigns.
Ethiopia stands ready to work positively and constructively with all its partners to scale up humanitarian assistance, rebuild social cohesion, and restore basic services in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Therefore, what the country needs at this critical moment is the support of friends and partners and not uncalled for pressure that would complicate the situation further. What is saddening is the attempt to dictate terms to the country in ways that are not helpful. We do not consider this a friendly act. That is why the Ethiopian government cannot be expected to accept with equanimity this condescending approach. We are indeed disappointed by the campaign that is being waged against Ethiopia.
Demeqe also urged the international community and partners to be part of Ethiopia's effort to return the humanitarian situation in the region into normalcy, that engaging on unhelpful activities under the guise of humanitarian concern.
It is extremely regrettable to see that some within the international community have embarked on a mission to undermine the unity, territorial integrity, and the cohesion of the Ethiopian state under the guise of humanitarian concern. We urge these individuals and partners to desist from these unhelpful activities. In this regard, accusations leveled against Ethiopia of using hunger as a weapon of war on its own citizens is an egregious falsehood and in no way calculated to help foster peace, harmony, and stability.
Ethiopia has a firm stance to work together with all its partners to scale up humanitarian assistance, rebuild social cohesion, and restore basic service in the Tigray state. However, some actors have attempted to smuggle weapons to arm the terrorist cell under the name of humanitarian assistance, Demeqe noted.
We have credible evidence indicating that some actors have attempted to smuggle weapons to arm the terrorist cell under the guise of humanitarian assistance. This is unacceptable.
In response to the situation, since the outset of the law enforcement in Tigray, the Ethiopian government has been working aggressively to accelerate the humanitarian response to reach out to every person in need, he said.
The Ethiopian government is using every ounce of its strength to mobilize all the necessary resources from within the country to reach out those in need, but its resources are limited. This is where the support and solidarity of the international community becomes all the more critical. We are grateful to those who lent a helping hand in this regard.
Currently, 6 operators, namely World Food Programme, World Vision, Care Relief Society of Tigray, Food for the Hungry, and the Ethiopian government are providing food assistance in the region.
To you all, dear viewers. In this edition, we'll be taking a glance at Shillala, the Ethiopian traditional battle cry. Ethiopians have long been known for their courage and defiance against foreign enemies. By way of warming up for a fight and showing their readiness, Ethiopians brag about their strength, their mercilessness against the enemy, and so on and so forth. Thus, Ethiopians do the battle cry while walking back and forth. A typical battle cry, or shillala, is done with the sword on one hand. Alternatively, others carry both the sword and the shield during battle songs.
Welcome back. You are watching Addis News Hour. Ethiopia should stop preoccupying with nasty sanctions and Western meddling and start reinforcing internal bonds and regional integration as remedies to the issues. South Sudan's ambassador to Ethiopia, James Morgan, made this remark in an exclusive interview with ETV. He strongly argued that Africa as a whole will always be open to sanctions unless it withdraws out of the United Nations Security Council and start continental unity. Shfarrao Lago reports.
Recently, especially after Ethiopia engaged in law enforcement operation in Tigray and its readiness to conduct the second filling of its mega hydropower dam, Ethiopia seems to be experiencing growing pressures from external forces, including restrictions by the Biden administration. The South Sudanese ambassador to Ethiopia says Ethiopia should stop preoccupying with the new measures and begin looking for remedies to foreign influences. Strong internal union and regional integration are some of the solutions.
My message is that to the Ethiopian brothers and sisters, this is not for us in South Sudan. The Western countries have meddled in our affairs. Even as I speak to you now, just a few days ago, they imposed on us sanctions. So this is not the first country that they're imposing sanctions. South Sudan had been living in sanctions since we became independent. We were sanctioned, and Ethiopia should not really worry much about the sanctions because what they are doing, they make restrictions, they make imposing economic sanctions to the extent sometimes, like in South Sudan, they impose the arms embargo. So we should not be worried about it. What we need to do is very important. Our unity as Africans and our unity as a region. Now here we in the Horn of Africa, we should unite and work towards our regional integration. We should not care about the sanctions. We should cooperate with one another. We should trade with one another. And we should make sure that life is made easier for our citizens.
Despite very frosty relations between Moscow and DC, the counter-terrorism cooperation is ongoing between even Russians and Americans. And Ethiopia is a different thing because Ethiopia is not a global adversary for US, but a long-standing partner. So if you make sudden decisions to depart from this cooperation of very sensitive nature, I mean, it's a big mistake, big loss for the US, because US needs for the global counterterrorism effort. It needs bases, it needs cooperation, it needs local knowledge. So I think it's pretty clear what is there on the table to lose if this is looked into.
The ambassador also strongly argues that the continent of Africa must withdraw from the UN and reinforce its ties within. Otherwise, it will always be subjected to unexpected sanctions and even colonization.
The UN Security Council has become a de facto leader of the world. They interfere everywhere. And if you could refer back to those days, our lovely African president, late Robert Mugabe, had been telling us that we should withdraw from this UN. This is the best thing that Africa should do. Africa just should withdraw from UN, and then we focus on our own issues. Because this is a new colonization of the continent. They want to colonize us. And in fact, if people don't take it seriously, we are under colony. We are a colony now. In the so-called the big five members of the UN Security Council, there is no any African representation there. So why do we really want to stay where we are not represented? We should just withdraw from the UN and focus on our own issues. Because now, this UN thing, they're becoming the masters of the world. If you don't toe according to their rules, you don't toe the line the way they want, they will sanction you.
The ambassador says Ethiopia and South Sudan are very friendly nations, and this will continue in the future in a strengthened manner.
Scholars enunciate the need to stand firm regardless of the growing external pressures against Ethiopia. In an exclusive interview with Ethiopian elite, they said Ethiopia's public agenda helped the country secure its national sovereignty, calling for maintaining that.
One cannot deny that Ethiopia's nationwide and unified wave has been a strong tool for guarding the country's sovereignty. Scholars agree that such patriotic sentiment among Ethiopians increasingly gets ignited, even during hard times.
And several countries has miscalculated Ethiopia in the past 150 years. So they think when Ethiopians argue each other on political issues, they feel that, okay, the country is divided and the people cannot stand together, and this is the right time to invade Ethiopia or to take land from Ethiopia. This has happened several times. When the Egyptians came to colonize in Ethiopia in the 1970s, they have the same kind of political miscalculation, but the country stood together. When Italy invaded Ethiopia in the 1990s, the Adwa campaign, and then also later on in the 1930s, they have made this kind of calculation that the country cannot stand together, it cannot unify, and in such a way we can easily conquer it. But they were wrong. Somalia also made the same mistake.
Historically, you don't remain perhaps one of the few countries in the world that remain independent, okay? That's not just by chance, okay? And then it's very important for us to realize that colonialism started to penetrate Ethiopia too. but it didn't succeed. Why? Because the people, as you pointed out, had a common purpose, a common interest, a common agenda for them to say it is worth dying for. That's exactly what happened in Adwa. That's what happened in Karamara. That's what happened historically. Whenever there were outside enemies, the people aggregate, they come together and defend their country.
Talking to ETV English, the scholars expressed the need to stand firm regardless of the growing external pressure against Ethiopia.
First, not to be shaken by the activities of these international forces. It is important for us to remain united. As long as we remain united, because the majority of Ethiopians are united, the majority. If at all there are those who are working against the interest of our country, they are the minority. So I think we always have to be cognizant of that. And so in as long as we remain united, and in as long as we remain focused on our agenda, then I don't think there will be any problem in terms of passing this moment of crisis.
There are political differences. There are also different political factions in Ethiopia. But that does not mean that every political faction and then every politically disgruntled group or party will not stand for the sovereignty of the country and support the current government. So historically, Ethiopia has proven itself that it can unite under difficult times. And the present circumstances are not different from that. So that's why you see from history as well as from what is occurring now, we learn that we can put aside our differences and we can stand together to at least to ensure our sovereignty.
They further reflected their scholastic suggestion on the positive and negative impacts of social media usage in the socio-economic and political arena, calling the users to be selective.
So all the misunderstandings, all kinds of rumors that circulate among the people, actually 80% of them, they come from social media, which doesn't have any credibility and authenticity. So the use must be very careful in terms of using such medias. After all, social media is a media to create network among people, to bring together, to make a common understanding.
Because social media is powerful, that's something that we have to live with. You know, we can't ignore it, but at the same time we have to find a way to combat some of its negative impact on our society, especially on our youth.
They reiterated maintaining Ethiopia's public agenda that has helped the country secure its national sovereignty.
In business, Ethio Telecom inaugurates 5 smart poles it erected in different parts of Entoto Park, which is becoming popular among local and international tourists. The modern smart poles are said to be vital to provide swift internet services for tourists visiting the park. The eco-friendly smart poles are ready for 5G network services. This according to CEO of the company, Freo Tamro. She said the move is a manifestation of the company's effort to modernize its services and introduce newly emerging telecom facilities to its customers. The smart poles will be erected in different parts of the Addis Ababa city as they are crucial to deliver uninterrupted network, especially in congested areas where ground cable networks are hard to install. This is a DC News Hour. In an extra secure 90-minute session with the phones and Wi-Fi cut off, all designed to block and eavesdropping by a prying foreign state, leaders of the G7 wrestled with an issue that will probably dominate the rest of their political lives: China and the right balance between extreme competition and necessary cooperative coexistence. Why all this in the G7 meeting? We have more on that. Kurt Campbell, Joe Biden's Indo-Pacific Policy Director, describes the dilemma as presenting complex coexistence paradigms, something of which he says the United States has had little previous experience. To put it crudely, can the West hang tough with China? In the Cornwall discussions, Biden, according to the U.S. officials, led in the forceful camp, followed by Boris Johnson, the Canadian Prime Minister, and the French President. Biden was especially keen for the G7 leaders not just to decry the use of forced labor in Xinjiang province and Western China in their communique, but for the West collectively to agree to act. The fact that Johnson had to propose a working party shows how delicate the issue has become and how elusive consensus. The Munich Security Forum last week devoted a whole report to the subject of how liberal democrats can compete where they must and cooperate with competitors where they can. Much think tank time is also expended dissecting how Biden's approach to China differs from that of Donald Trump. On many counts, Campbell and Matthew Pottinger, Trump's chief theorist of the China threat, would not disagree. They both came to the view that China is no longer just seeking to become the modern workshop of the world, but also an active ideological alternative to the liberal order. But Trump and Biden's teams differ on the base response. Biden's policy is not just to slap tariffs and a trade war or to impose sanctions, but also to join hands with Europe to outcompete, making the West collectively a more compelling example for countries caught between China and the United States. Biden is spending his first week on European soil seeking to woo and reassure his allies after 4 years on the edge of a nervous breakdown. In Cornwall, he never threw up a chance to send a bouquet inviting Angela Merkel to the White House, signing a new Atlantic Charter with the British in a nod to the wartime special relationship and insisting he was just delighted he was in the presence of a French president. But he's also trying to propose to Europe a credible strategy with which to challenge the Chinese state capitalist model. So he proposes a plan for a Western Belt and Road Initiative, a plan to replace Huawei's dominance and a plan to secure critical supply chains. And finally, reminder of the headlines. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed inaugurates the Grand Mescal Square project. And the G7 countries desperate to catch up with China's Belt and Road Initiative. That's all of the news in this edition. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and stay safe.